If you look around my office, you might realize I have kind of a love for dark, twisted cartoons. And a lot of that may be because I grew up with a lot of dark, twisted cartoons. Now, I'm not talking about the ones like Batman or ones that were meant for older kids. I'm talking about the ones that were meant for little kids, and they probably should have been made for little kids. And I loved the hell out of them. I enjoyed how much they scared me. I loved how every time you got through one, you felt a little tougher. So I'm doing a series reacting and reviewing them. We're gonna analyze how creative they are, how dark they are, and if the dark, twisted tone was warranted. So join me in taking a look at some dark tunes. It's the last Dark Toons episode before Halloween. Of course I want to see Bugs Bunny fight a vampire! Transylvania 65000 was released in 1963. You've probably seen it in a lot of Looney Tunes Halloween specials, so it only makes sense to wrap up Halloween with it. Let's take a look. So something that legit surprised me about this episode is that it's directed by Chuck Jones, which is not a surprise, his style is all over it, but it was also directed by Maurice Noble. Now, Maurice Noble did a lot of backgrounds for Chuck Jones. Chances are you remember his backgrounds the most. They stood out the most, they were the most unique. But he surprisingly did not do the backgrounds for this, even though it looks a lot like his style. The person who did the backgrounds was Philip DeGard, who also did a lot of background work for Looney Tunes and especially Chuck Jones, and it is very similar to Maurice Noble's work, but the big difference, I think, is that it's a lot more transparent. Literally transparent. You can see through half the line work in it. Even though the exaggerated shapes and angles are very similar to Noble's work, that's usually the big giveaway, so it's very interesting to see them work so closely in this one. You can really tell because the backgrounds, big shock like in a lot of these, are really phenomenal. This is also one of the few times Mel Blanc wasn't the only voice actor acknowledged for doing voices in a Looney Tunes cartoon. In fact, these two, Ben Frommer and Julie Bennett, actually got credit before the actor who did Elmer Fudd got credit. And even here, Mel Blanc still has to have his name bigger than everyone else. So, I mean, must have been a good contract he had there. So like I said, even though the shapes are very Noble, the colors don't always add up. You can kind of see through them. That's very much DeGard. Despite the differences, it surprisingly meshes really well.
Who is that delicious young creature, Emily?
I love these two, Agatha and Emily. They look like Dr. Seuss characters, don't they? And the voice actress had done some Looney Tunes work before, but it was mainly the normal sounding voice. If the idea of the joke was for a woman to sound more like just an average woman, not a goofy voice like, you know, you give to June Foray or something like that, they usually went to her. The best example I can think of is Mona Lisa talking in one of the Pepe Le Pew cartoons.
I can tell you chaps one thing. It's not always easy to hold this smile.
Doesn't he look sweet and crunchy, Agatha?
Something else DeGard liked to do where Maurice Noble would have something in the distance, but it would really have to measure out. It'd be exaggerated, but you could really feel the distance with it. Here, DeGard had a lot of distance too, but it was very flat. It was purposefully flat, so you could see everything. It was very vertical. So you look at the background here, that doesn't look like it's very far away. There's a lot of depth to it, but that's part of the fun, is that it's all there. Like the entire castle, the inside, somehow you can see just through that one little doorway.
I just want to call me travel agency.
The way this guy moves before he takes form, it's very clever because he kind of moves like smoke, but then he also kind of moves like torn cloth. It's got a good creep value to it, but it's also pretty humorous.
Count, blood count. At your service.
Ben Frommer, who does, I mean, his name is Blood Count, but I mean, it's Dracula. It's clearly Dracula. I mean, he has the same accent and everything. He didn't do too much for Looney Tunes, but he was a bit actor. And sometimes he did do voiceover work. Looking him up, you can see him in a lot of old shows at the time, just sort of these one-off appearances, but probably the best known is he was the drunk in Bride of the Monster. I believe he was also in Plan 9 from Outer Space, so he's got a couple Ed Wood movies under his belt. He's very funny here.
Oh yes, right this way.
Wonderful shadow work here. I love the layout here where half of it's just completely dark, but then you have even things in the foreground are highlighted even though they're also in shadow, and there's not a ton of color, which is tricky. There's not like too much gray tone there, but there's just enough that they stand out. I also love that most of the doorways are a coffin. That's, I mean, come on, that's Obvious but wonderful. Again here, having the walls in the foreground frame the image is very noble, but having it continue to go further and further back, there's just more and more hallways for it to keep going back, that's very Dugard.
This is your room.
I just want a telephone.
Rest first.
I love the way he grabs his head. It's very intimidating, but it's the same way maybe you would hold and pet an animal, but you just know if you apply a little pressure, you can kill him. He's very... Everything about him is very laid back, but threatening at the same time.
Good night. Asleep yet?
Nope.
One of the things I love about Bugs' expressions in the best cartoons is that he is the most content character. He always looks so comfortable whatever situation he's in, whether he's a bullfighter or just trying to go to sleep, whatever. He just looks so relaxed. I think that's why so many people really look up to him. They want to be that smart, but they also want to be that chill, too.
Magic can be performed either by potions.
If you don't pay attention or you have like a darker TV, you might miss that the walls actually open up behind him so that the Count can sneak in.
Is the word abacadabra.
Now his magic words are not very imaginative, but as you'll figure out, that is intentional because it plays to some really smart, clever wordplay. Some of my favorite in any of the Looney Tunes.
Another highly useful magic word is hocus pocus.
So you humorously set this up. He says abacadabra, he's gonna turn into a bat. He says hocus pocus, he turns back, and you get a funny little scene out of that. Now, in a lot of cartoons at the time, it would end there, but they keep going with it later.
Da 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 hocus pocus.
And this is a classic Chuck Jonesism. If something's gonna happen to someone, it doesn't just all happen at once. Certain parts go faster than others. So when he turns him back into a human, the head turns first, and the gravity of him drags the rest of the body out.
Now I crush you!
Abacadabra.
So this is where it comes back into play, and even though the timing could be a little faster, I think this is some of their finest writing. I think this is so clever. Just the constant going back and forth. Every time he tries to just get up, I mean, just to stand up, he's immediately turned back.
Abacadabra.
Again, once would be enough, but the fact they keep doing it just makes it funnier, like he just doesn't learn.
Abracapocus.
Alright, this is where it gets brilliant in my opinion, because not only is he messing around with the words, they're really playing around with the idea that somehow you say a word, just magic can happen, so he tries mixing it up, but his acting is really phenomenal here. I love the way he just says abacapocus, like, what would happen if I say this? Like, he's testing the waters.
Hocus cadabra.
And of course, he just gets more excited at the possibilities.
Newport News.
And that's two great jokes on top of each other, just saying random words that could sound like magic words, and on top of that, turning into a character we've seen before. That's Witch Hazel.
Walla Walla, Washington.
That's great writing. I just love that you make up random words, you know, it just keeps going along. Like, the joke has begun, you have to follow all the way through. So you make up random words, the weirder they sound, even if they're real places, the stranger the creature has to look. And of course you can see this punchline coming, but it's still a perfect ending.
Isn't it romantic?
As you may pick up, most Halloween Looney Tunes specials have the point where they tie into another cartoon, where he's calling whoever Daffy at Quackbusters or something like that to say how things are going, and it creates a link to the next cartoon.
Abracapocus.
Kinda shocked that was never an ability in one of the Bugs Bunny games, even though they do use blood count in some of them. He also appears in the Tiny Toons episode where he does a Jack Nicholson impression.
Wait till she gets a load of me.
It was odd. Really nice final image. I love the cloud mist there. I love the way, again, the colors don't quite add up to the line work, but they still have such personality, and even the cobwebs, you can see through them. So again, just a wonderful blending of two great background artists. And there you go, a really wonderful Chuck Jones, Bugs Bunny Halloween cartoon. My only issue, you know, if you see it here, obviously I'm editing it down, but the timing could be a little faster. That's the only issue I really have with it. But the writing is really fantastic. It's still Bugs Bunny, who's always great. And the layout is just so grand. I mean, I just see this and I think think Halloween. Like, every single time this comes on TV or I see it on a special or something like that, there's kind of a legit excitement because it just puts you in that Halloween mood with the big castle and the cobwebs and so forth. The colors seem very much spooky like you would see in a cartoon like this. I really, really like it. So the real question I have for you is, if you have seen this cartoon, where did you first see it? Did you just see it on TV or as part of a compilation, or did you see it in a Halloween special? Because most people I know saw it in some movie with the Looney Tunes or Halloween special with the Looney Tunes. I'd love to know where you came across it. Hey everyone, if there's any particular cartoon you want me to look at as being very dark or twisted, leave it in the comments below. Again, I'm not really looking for movie scenes or cartoons meant for teenagers or older. I'm talking about ones meant for little kids, but still scare the shit out of you. Whether it's an old cartoon or a new cartoon, let me know what you want me to look at.